I'd love to hear from all of you, what you think it takes to make a great sports journalist. But what I mean by that is, a few days ago on Deadspin, I believe, Will posted a comment about how funny it was that he was on this panel because he doesn't really consider himself a sports journalist. And I know that various other panelists have had, lots of strong reactions to that, and I'd love to hear from all of you. What do you think makes a sports journalist, and what do you think it takes in terms of education and training and experience to make a great one?
It's like any other profession. Anything in sports, whether you write about sports or whether you're a coach or whether you're a player, by definition you think sports is more important than it actually is. And when that starts happening, you start writing for other people that work in the profession of sports, and rather than for the people that are actually reading and paying for all this. So to me, I chose the path that would ideally be able to actually have me write about sports and actually still like sports. So that was my notion on it, but that's just the way I did it, and I'm probably wrong.
How about you, Steve? You had a pretty visceral reaction.
Yeah. When I was telling you yesterday, when I read Will's comment, I thought, who is this young, enormously successful punk, And if he doesn't think he's a
You're 1 for 3 on comments, by the way. I'm just a punk.
I thought, well, if he doesn't think he's a sports journalist, then I don't have to think I'm a sports journalist. And I thought I was at a panel, actually it was like about 5 years ago. It was speakers from one of these Best American Sports Writing panels, and they introduced everyone, and the first person said, well, I'm not really a sports journalist, I'm more of an essayist. And the second guy said, well, I'm not a sports journalist, I'm a novelist. And then the next was a critical thinker. And it ended with Dick Schaap, the late Dick Schaap, may he rest in peace. And he said, well, and if anything, he'd been working 100 years in sports journalism. And he said, well, I'm not really a sports journalist, I'm a non-practicing gynecologist.
Now, like teams, when they have new players, are putting the players through media training seminars immediately.
Yeah. Right.
Like they're ready for you. And the goal of these is to don't say, there's no upside for a professional athlete to say anything interesting.
So how important is it actually to get access in order to have a great story? I mean, we run the gamut up here of people who do spend a ton of time with these athletes versus, Will, you're hanging out at your computer and maybe never talking to these athletes. How important do you feel it is in terms of the great coverage you can do?
Oh, I mean, I got to weigh in on this whole thing with professional athletes. I mean, I agree with Will that, these guys are cliche machines. But at the same time, I mean, one of the problems is that's not the athletes failing. A lot of times you see this idiotic scene after every game where there's like Derek Jeter standing there and there's 25 people standing around him asking and they're all writing down every word he says, and you know what? They will go over and make sure their quotes match. And I've been at the World Series where these guys, I mean, this is coming out a little bit now, where these guys are like, half the guys are down in the locker room, and the other guys who have earlier deadlines because they're on the East Coast are up there, and the guys on the West Coast papers will come up and give them the quotes. So the same quotes in the Portland Press Herald, it's in the, and it's just this incredible, the problem is there's a lot of lazy people in that locker room. And I'm not saying lazy, I'm saying lazy. Dumb questions, stupid questions. How does it feel? And I got to tell you, I hope that, and I'm not trying to offend anyone, they're very good, broadcast reporters, but those TV people, oh my God. I'm sure, Seth, you've seen this too. Like, they come up and they're like, they just bust into the scrum and they're like, how does it feel? You just won the World Series. How does it feel?
Feels the worst is when they're like, can you just talk about, can you just talk about the Steelers?
Talk about that play.
Yeah, talk about Steelers.
Keep talking. Okay, good. Keep talking. It's idiotic, and it's like, that's part of the problem because these guys get worn down, and this whole tradition of having reporters in the locker room, it comes from, I think it was Jerome Holtzman or someone who finally said, hey, I'm going to get an edge on my competition. I'm going to go hang out outside the locker room, and I'm going to talk to these guys and get things that other people aren't getting. And I mean, honestly, the more I see it, the more I think they should just stop. I mean, these guys are in their underwear, and they're forced to give interviews, and it's like, they come out of the shower and they're literally in a towel, and there's some idiot who doesn't know any better asking them questions. It's one of the problems is you need to, with professional athletes, I find that there are things they want to talk about. And one of the things they always want to talk about is their craft. They're like anybody. It's like if you ask, a football player, like tell me, who's on the special teams, like how do you set the wedge? You know, or you ask Gary Sheffield, like, you know, your numbers against left-handed pitching went up like to career high out of nowhere. Like, how did you do it? Like, what, you know, how did you do that? You will get the most enthusiastic responses and interesting, intelligent, you know, analysis you've ever heard, and everyone will surprise you.